ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהכל נהיה בדברו. In order to build the tabernacle, Mishkan in Hebrew, which was a temple, a structure that was put up and then taken apart and carried by our ancestors in the desert. In order to build that, you needed certain funds, you needed help. So the Torah instructs that everyone has to give machzit hashekel. He has to give half of a coin. Shekel is now, for instance, the monetary unit in the state of Israel. But in those days, it was also a shekel. You had to give half of a shekel. Everybody had to give the same thing. This way, everybody participated. It was a democratic process. The tabernacle didn't belong to one family or to 5 very privileged families. Everybody, every member of the Jewish people contributed half a shekel. And this way, everybody felt part of that structure, which is the tabernacle. A very interesting point. The Torah says that you have to give according to what your heart dictates to you to give. In other words, you can't just give it like this, but you should give it with feeling, with sentiment also. Many a time I ask myself, if there's a poor person, and he extends his hand, he wants some help, there's somebody who needs medicine and he doesn't have it, there's somebody who is hungry, and you provide him with it. You give him the food, or you help him with the medicine. Does it matter whether you're doing it with your whole heart or not? The fact that is most important is whether the recipient receives it or not, whether the poor person, the one who is hungry, is able to chew something, to survive. Isn't that so? Maybe that is so, but I think that in giving, there are 2 partners. There is one that gives, and there is one that receives. Maybe from the point of view of one that receives, it isn't so important what your intent is. Of course, if you give it to him with a sour face, if you give it to him and throw it at him, he may not like it. He'd much rather that you give it to him maybe with a smile at the same time. It makes him feel better. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is for the hungry person, whether he can swallow, he can chew a piece of bread because his stomach is empty and it's crying for it. But on the other hand, for the person who gives, if you don't give it with all your heart, there's no benefit. Who of us pays taxes joyfully? We pay taxes because we must. Somehow a state, a government is too far removed from us and we don't feel any direct connection. You pay taxes because there's an internal service revenue. You know, they're going to go after you if you don't pay it. But you do it with a good disposition? Most of us, I don't think, do it. On the other hand, on a personal level, when we give something to an institution, because we appreciate the work of that institution, when we help an orchestra that needs money in order to survive, then we become connected to that institution and we feel much better. When you pay your taxes, I don't think you feel that much better. You just know that the police won't be running after you. But when you give something with heart, there's a tremendous benefit for you. Sometimes I wonder, who gets the greater benefit? Is it the person that receives or the person that gives? There is an interesting word in the Torah. It says that each one had to give to redeem his soul. And the word that is used, each one had to give, is venatnu. In Hebrew, that is a word that can be read from right to left and from left to right the same way. It's one of those rare words. But what it means maybe is that when you give, you receive. And when you give with a full heart, you receive much more than what you are giving. So therefore, bear in mind, when you are at home and you give to your children, when you give him his weekly allowance, when you make sure that there is enough in order to meet the obligations in the home, do it with a smile. Do it with a good disposition, because then not only will you fulfill certain obligations that you have, you will thereby feel so much better with yourself. And that is very important. not only to make somebody else feel good, make yourself feel better. Because if you feel better, eventually you will make someone else feel better as well.